Today, we are going to interview Mark Stolzenberg, and Mark is the founder of the New York Acting School for Film and Television. And what we're going to specifically talk about today is the business of doing commercials. And Mark, I'm assuming that there's some big difference between how you do a commercial and how you act on television or on film for a TV series or for a movie.
Well, yeah, technically there is, but the basic technique of acting is still the same. You have to have a character, a motivation, an intention, a sense of place, develop relationships. But commercials are obviously different than straight, normal acting, because you're dealing with selling a product. That's the goal, not portraying a drama, though some commercials are dramatic in their content. So I suggest to anyone who wants to do commercials that you get really strong with your basic acting technique, like my basic essentials course that I teach. You have to be really good on-camera actor to first before you do commercials. It's like a specialty. It's kind of like being a doctor. You have to be a doctor first before you become a surgeon. Surgeon is a special skill built on being a doctor. Well, doing commercials is a specialty that actors can learn but you need the basic technique first.
Mark, it seems to me that I've heard from some people that the commercial business can be extremely lucrative.
Yes, it can. Well, there are two tiers. One is non-union, one is union. If you're a union commercial actor, that could be a source of money fund. You could retire on what you make on a commercial, possibly. So that's if you're in the union, if you're in the Screen Actors Guild. If you're not, the money is still good. It's just not fabulous, not as great. But it's a real terrific way to make money in a short period of time. It's usually a one-day shoot. And if it's union, you get residuals after that. I did one commercial. I got residuals for about 10 years from it. Just money, just every few months, you get a check in the mail from one day's work. It's fabulous. I did an audition. I got cast in an MCI commercial, and it ended up being just a half a day shoot. And about a month later, I still hadn't gotten my check. And I finally called up my agent. I said, how come I never got paid for the MCI? Well, come into the office, I'll write you a check. And he wrote me this check. It was like the initial check. And I was like, oh my God, all this money? I'm not going to tell you how much. But so here's what happened. They took that half-day shoot and they made 4 different commercials out of it, out of one half day of photography. And each spot ran independently. It was similar. It was just me, the same character in the same situation, but they cut it 4 different ways and made 4 different commercials. And I got separate checks, separate residuals for each commercial that they did. It was like a beautiful thing. I mean,
Yeah, okay. So the beginning of any acting gig is the audition. And how are the auditioners looking at you differently than they might in another
Yeah. Well, that's a very good question. It's a tough one to answer because commercials are a little bit of a crapshoot. But one thing for sure, if your acting is strong and you do a good script analysis and you understand what they're doing, you're going to be in a much better position to get cast. Just like anything else, it's not just the way you look. I had one commercial I did for a baseball video game where I was a sports doctor, and I was had to pull a cleat out of a catcher's butt in the locker room because he was cleated. It was very funny, and he was screaming and yelling. Anyhow, point of the story is when I walked into the audition, I saw like 30 guys sitting there. They all, to me, looked like real doctors. I would, if anyone asked me, what does this guy do? I'd say, that guy looks like a doctor. And then it was me. I mean, I don't think I look like a doctor. I kind of, I'm like a sort of tall, good-looking Danny DeVito. So anyway, I just focused. I said, just pull yourself together, get focused. You can do this. And I created a character, and I really got into what I was doing and made it believable. And I got the part. I couldn't believe it. And the director during the shoot came up to me and said, "Hey, Mark, you know why I cast you for this? Because you were the best actor who auditioned. You were the most believable and real. And that's why I cast you." So I just used my regular film acting technique to get that part. But auditions for commercials are different. You have to be very positive in your attitude, because commercials have a very positive feel. So attitude is very important, and you want to have an understanding of the product in relationship to the product. In commercials, we say the product is God. Everything is deferred to the product. So if you're holding up a box of cornflakes, you can't cover up the word Kellogg's cornflakes with your hand while you're talking about it. You have to hold the product in a very specific way in the frame at a certain. I have all these tricks that I give people, tips that you must know to do commercials. And this is one specific one. If you're holding up a product, it has to be held down right or down left of your face, right about here. I call that the sweet spot. And you never, ever cover the product or hold it like this. You have to hold it on the sides, so we see the entire name of the product. And when you're talking about the cornflakes, you can't be shaking the box while you're talking. So it takes a little bit of practice and discipline to hold a product still. And then you can gesture with the other hand, blah, 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 move around, do whatever actions you have to do, drink coffee without moving the product. That's just one example of a special skill that you need for commercials. And you'd be surprised, I teach this, how many people have trouble getting that because they're talking and they're moving, or the thing gets tilted. I'm talking about it has to be perfectly still in the frame. That's a skill that you have to develop. That's one example. Another example is being able to interpret the copy properly. I love commercials. I've always hated commercials before I started actually doing them because I found them annoying. But when I started doing commercials, I realized the art form there. And I like to think that commercials are like poems. And if you just look at the copy, it reads like a poem. And you have to do script analysis to figure out what exactly is going on in this poem. And another, I can't talk obviously about every little thing, but just to mention one other thing. Whenever you say the name of the product, you have to lift and float the name of the product. Lift and float. I like Kellogg's cornflakes. You wouldn't say, I like Kellogg's cornflakes. Yeah. Never make it a statement. You'll have to lift and float the name of the product in a positive way, always. The other thing is that makes it sort of a little poem and a drama is there's always some kind of story, relationship, metaphor going on with a commercial. And you really have to know you have to do heavy duty script analysis to figure out what I say to my students, what are they selling here? Well, they're selling cornflakes. That's not what people sell in commercials. They sell popularity, they sell love, they sell sex, they sell money, they sell security, they sell family bonding. These are things that are the undertow to all commercials. We're talking about behavior modification. That's what commercials are. So all commercials reach very deep under the surface to try to modify people's behavior. And one of the jobs you have to do as a commercial actor is to analyze the script and figure out what they're selling. That helps you to color your performance and give it meaning and develop relationships and create the character, create attitude. All these things are a part of it, So if your character is supposed to be an upper middle class woman driving a BMW, you can't sound like, you're a waitress in a greasy diner, So, but you have to derive this information. All that information is actually in the copy of the commercial if you get good at script analysis and figuring it out. And that's one of the things I teach in my class, how to analyze the copy. so that you can then figure out how to play the character, how to play the relationships, what attitude you have, etc. Those are all very important things.
So I've been accused of being a very fast talker, but I've always wondered how in the world do they get so much content in 30 seconds?
Yeah.
So is there an art to a commercial in terms of getting it right in the space?
Yeah, well, there's a musicality to most commercials. So commercials work on a metronome. You have 30 seconds to deliver your message. Oh, and let me say that these scripts are not just thrown together. I mean, they may take 6 months to 2 years to develop an advertising campaign for a commercial. So that copy is mulled over by a team of writers for months and months, and they keep changing it and making adjustments. So by the time they're finished, every nuance in that copy is exactly the way they want it. And your job as an actor is to honor that and just come in right on the music so that it's exactly 30 seconds. I've done commercials where the director will say, "Could you say that line again and shave off a quarter of the second?" And what do I say? "No problem. I'm Mark Stolzenberg. I could do that for you." But a half a second in a commercial is a long time because the whole thing is only 30 seconds. So time is kind of condensed and you have to really be on the money. A commercial pause, if you have to take a pause in a commercial is different than a pause in comedy or a sitcom or a drama. There's a very specific nuance to a commercial pause. It's just a little and go. And these are the kind of things you learn with practice. It's not like, that's why I teach a class in it, because it has to be practiced.
Right.
And a casting director can tell if you audition for a commercial, if you've been trained to do commercials. They can see right away if you don't know what you're doing. So it's very important.
So you have two people who are probably the most likely to take your class. You have somebody who has some experience out there, a working actor who now wants to go into commercials. So I would say they would be an ideal candidate. And the other person, though, would be someone who doesn't have an existing business of being in acting. And for them, you do recommend that they take your essentials class first. Maybe even sometimes the working actors should take the essentials class.
Absolutely, yeah. Because I have a very specific technique that I teach, and the essentials class is really chock full of hot tips and ways to punch up your level and make you just more interesting, productive, fabulous up on the screen, so that you're castable. Yeah.
All right. So if somebody's interested in getting involved in your classes, do they meet a specific night of the week, or do they meet? How does that part work?
Well, it's usually it varies, but right now we're teaching commercials on the weekend now on Saturdays. Usually it's 5 consecutive Saturdays, and we're doing that on Zoom. Works great on Zoom because when you're on Zoom, it's just like being on camera. And I find it very easy to do. So usually we do 5 consecutive Saturdays, and that would be the course. Yeah, and I have real commercial copy that I've collected over the years that I use with people. Whenever I go to an audition, when I used to go to live auditions, now they don't have that so much anymore because you do virtual or self-tapes. But I spent years running around New York City to all the studios auditioning for commercials. And some of them were huge complexes where they would have like 7 or 8 commercials that they were auditioning at the same time. So when I go to do my audition, I would look around the room and see the other auditions and just kind of mosey over and steal the copy from the other commercials. So I have a whole collection of commercials that I kind of pilfered at audition. Don't tell anybody. And I use them in my class.
All right. So if somebody wants to get in touch with you in order to sign up for your commercials class, how would they do that?
Well, go to my website, actingclassforfilm.com. Or they could call 212-877-2219. or they can email me, stolzfunds72@gmail.com. Any of those will work.
Fantastic, Mark. Thanks for the interview.